talk about pressure we put on ourselves versus pressure we get from work. Essentially, those external and internal pressures. And in particular, I guess it got catalyzed by a conversation I had with the high school that I went to. The other week, I got to go back to my alma mater for our 25th high school reunion. And I was asked to speak to the current student body. And they have literally like a club called Team Care that's about their holistic well-being. Something I definitely would have enjoyed having when I was there. And the evolution of support, right? And so it had me thinking, most people, when they think they're burned out because of work, but it's often not the job, it's the pressure we put on ourselves. And there's this concept of this conditioning that starts really, really early and becomes invisible as we grow. And I know in my life, it was really helpful, especially in my late 20s, when I started to learn, is this an inherited past-based pressure in my life, or is this a constant or current concern? And that let me get present and start to live my life from now versus, past-based experiences. This inherited definition of success was a constant conversation with them. They were really obviously focused. They're, especially the juniors and seniors, where college placement and life beyond those four walls was at the top of their mind. And it had me think, when you're young, no one teaches you how to define success. They just teach you how to chase it, especially in a high achieving college preparatory environment where it was you were self-policing. The bar to get in of just rigor was so high that everybody there, that academic pursuit was what was ultimate. For all of them, they do exit interviews now. They talked about how the junior year was their most challenging because they were just focused on school. They were just focused on finishing this test versus all the other experiences, the clubs, the social environments, the dances, the sports, the theater, the music, the AV. It was all on these numerical test scores to get to the next thing. And it had me reflect on how much of that is imposed on themselves and how much of that is the external conversation, whether it's the families, whether it's the city, whether it's the scholastic environment that was there when I was there and was there before me. And essentially, how can we help alter it or shift it or have younger generations not have to carry these older generational imposed pressures that don't help? They just harm. And I think it was then how do we then utilize it for good, basically. It's when those inner pressures masquerade as external stress. It's you think it's other people asking you for more, but it's actually you, because you've never been able to hear what is this thought that I have actually mine, or where did I make it as almost a survival mechanism to succeed in this environment that I was placed in. They're in a system that still tells them this is success and this is success. And they're at a phase in their lives, especially in, late childhood and very young adulthood, where they start to create further identities of who they are and what they are about. And that will often carry them if they don't become really intentional on their thought processes and mechanisms. It's something about, especially in high school, that frame carries itself into the real world. And you see it in their 20s and the 30s. And I'm in my 40s, and I got to go back and, talk to guys that I went to school with and see what were our choices in all areas of our life and where did that lead us to where we are now. So it gave me an interesting almost case study and framework to see, and we talk about the isolation that's happened, not only post-pandemic, but also with technology. And without community, you lose sort of that mirror, and you lose hearing people say the things that are inside of you. So you realize it's not individualistic, or you're not weird, or you're not alone. Most importantly, there are these missing rituals that once kept some of this pressure testing human. And there's something about what I try to give the students, especially, was not talking about so much about balance, but about skill sets and learning how to be present and use the data, that information, where it's a value set of what they care about. And I tried to use the analogy, rough seas make skilled sailors. And from there, it was trying to have them understand, you don't ever get to choose always what happens to you, but you can always choose how to respond. And so when you utilize this information, you can kind of look at, what are my values? What do I care about? What can I learn from this? Where do I want to go? How do I want to be? These are good questions because it also taps into curiosity and creation versus sort of just removing I'm screwed here. or I don't know what to do here, and I don't want to even think about what to do here. I'm just done, and it just feels like an overwhelming tsunami of thoughts, feelings, emotions. It seems like an insurmountable object. And so I was offering, like, what can we do physiologically to be in the present moment? Teaching them young to get into meditation, proactively engage in their day. Teaching them young about like breath work. Teaching them young about being in the present moment to the best of their ability, from the present moment and the next present moment and the next present moment. That's how the life can keep unfolding. And so that's how they're not going to make choices based on old past-based patterns, and how they can actually generate and create new ways of living. And the younger, the better, you know? When you slow down enough to name what's expected of you, and when you slow down enough to see, is this self-imposed or not, it lets you reclaim that energy and that confidence and that clarity. And so the thing that was present to me is, no, you cannot control every demand that comes at you. You can't. But you can decide which ones to carry and which ones to put down. That's entirely within your choice. That choice and that clarity is what keeps you from burning out. You know, and the thing that was like, next time like you feel overwhelmed, ask yourself, is this real or remembered? And if it's actually real, it lets you take on a much different action for the person you are today than needing to take an old action based on a person you were way back when. And it is very fulfilling when you're that present to life. And it was just an honor to be with them. I have a lot of hope for the future because they were inspiring. So